I want to welcome each of you on this beautiful day to say it is an honor to be with you, to stand with our good and great ally, the nation of Israel. I want to say thank you to the many distinguished guests here, to Ambassador Bolton, to Israeli Deputy Minister of Defense Danny Danon, to ZOA President Mort Klein, to Dr. Joe Frager, and to all of the many who worked hard to bring us together for this fantastic rally. It is particularly meaningful to be here today because this past week I was in the nation of Israel. It was the third time I've traveled to Israel in the past year and a half. And I went to Israel because the challenges facing the nation of Israel, the challenges facing the national security, the challenges facing America's national security have never been greater than they are right now. I want to come to you with good news and with challenges. On the good news, there is good news both in Israel and in America. In America, we have seen recently the possibility of speaking with a clear voice against the rabid extremism of the nation of Iran. A couple of months ago, all of us were shocked when Iran named as its ambassador to the United Nations Hamid Abu-Dhabi, a known terrorist who participated in holding 52 Americans hostage for 444 days. Iran's doing so was intended to be and was in fact a slap in the face to the United States of America. I introduced legislation in the U.S. Senate to ban Abu-Dhabi and other known terrorists from being admitted to the United States. And I'm proud to tell you that that legislation passed the United States Senate 100-0. It then passed the House of Representatives 435-0. And President Obama signed that legislation into law. A couple of weeks ago, President Obama joked at the White House Correspondents' Dinner. He said, "Ted Cruz recently introduced legislation and I, President Obama, signed it into law. Here's a picture of the signing ceremony." And he did a picture of himself, a picture of me, and a picture of the devil with hell freezing over it. And what I will say is it is encouraging to see such bipartisan unanimity standing up against the rabid anti-Americanism, the extreme values of the Iranian government. It is encouraging to see the United States Congress speak with one voice and say, we will not allow known terrorists to live in Manhattan with diplomatic immunity. I will say there were also very encouraging signs in Israel. I spent 2 days this past week in Israel. For one thing, you are seeing a bonanza of new energy resources, natural gas resources being developed off the coast of Israel. Allowing Israel not only to be on the path of becoming energy independent, but in fact being able to export energy to her neighbors. And I want to describe to you in particular one profoundly meaningful experience that I had this past week in Israel. I traveled up to the Golan Heights to the border with Syria and met with the IDF and traveled to the Zif hospital in northern Israel, where they have treated over 1,000 Syrians, over 1,000 Syrians wounded in the horrible civil war that is playing out. Across the border, the IDF officers were discussing how wounded Syrians would be carried across the border seeking help, and Israeli military would provide help in ambulances with military officials and then would take them to the local hospital. That local hospital has given over $8 million in free medical care to wounded Syrians. And I'll tell you what was powerful was visiting with the social worker who described how Syrian children would go to bed in their own beds and a mortar would explode. And they would awaken, they would find themselves that they had been horribly injured, perhaps missing a limb or two. And they would find themselves in the nation of Israel being cared for by Israeli physicians and nurses. And these children, their whole lives had been told that Israel was the devil, that those south of the border hated them and wanted to kill them, and the terror these children would at first have. And then the astonishment as they would see the compassionate humanitarian care that Israel provided for them. I'll tell you, one doctor in Israel told me a story of a woman in Syria who had been wounded, and she told the doctor afterward, she said, "My entire life, the army that I had been told was there to protect me is trying to kill me and my family. And my entire life, the army that I had been told wanted to kill me, the Israeli army, is now the only ones that are working to save me and my family." What a powerful, incredible testament to the values that define the nation of Israel, the humanitarian values, and I hope that example will shine like a beacon in the region, changing the lives of those who are cared for out of goodwill and compassion. And yet, despite the many good signs, there are also great signs of challenge. In particular, as I met with senior leaders of the Israeli government, including Prime Minister Netanyahu and the defense minister and the head of the Knesset and members throughout the senior government, what was striking was across party lines the absolute unanimity that, number one, the gravest national security threat facing the nation of Israel right now is the threat of the nation of Iran acquiring nuclear weapons capability. And number two, every single Israeli official with whom I met agreed with Prime Minister Netanyahu that this deal right now being negotiated with Iran is a very, very bad deal, is an historic mistake. I will tell you, I fear right now that we are repeating the mistakes of the Clinton administration in the 1990s with respect to North Korea. In the 1990s, America led the world relaxing sanctions against North Korea. And North Korea used the billions of dollars that flowed into that country to develop nuclear weapons. Ironically, the very same person that negotiated that failed North Korea deal is leading the U.S. negotiations with the nation of Iran right now. And the danger, I would note, of Iran acquiring nuclear weapons capability is qualitatively different than any other nation on earth, because the Iranian supreme leader is driven by a radical religious extremism that glorifies death and glorifies suicide. The leaders of Iran have stated their desire to annihilate the nation of Israel. And if there is one principle from time immemorial, it is that when someone tells you they want to kill you, you should believe them. These are extraordinarily challenging times. In my view, not only should we not be cutting this bad deal and relaxing sanctions, we should immediately reimpose and stiffen the sanctions on Iran. Until Iran dismantles its centrifuges and hands over the enriched uranium. And let me tell you right now, the bill in the Senate, the Kirk-Menendez sanctions bill, I'm an original co-sponsor. The Senate should have voted on that months ago. And the only reason we have not voted on it is Majority Leader Harry Reid will not allow a vote on Iran sanctions. There is a bipartisan majority of the United States Senate that would pass Kirk-Menendez if we could just have a vote, and given the threat to Israel and the United States, we need to vote on sanctions to Iran now. Let me finally say, the relationship, the friendship between the United States and Israel is and should always be unbreakable. You have my commitment that as long as there are calls for apartheid-style boycotts and sanctions and divestitures, there will always be a strong voice in the U.S. Senate to stand with the nation of Israel. You have my word that as long as there is a threat of the nation of Iran acquiring nuclear weapons capability, there will always be a strong voice in the U.S. Senate against a bad deal with Iran and for protecting our national security. At the end of the day, the friendship and alliance between Israel and Iran defends the national security of Israel, but it powerfully defends the national security of the United States of America. And if, God forbid, Iran finds itself on the verge of acquiring nuclear weapons capability, and if Israel is forced to stand up and act to protect her national security, then you have my word, there will always be a strong voice in the United States Senate to stand with Israel and to defend our interest in